What would happen if all 10 of Megumi's 10 shadows were destroyed? Let's talk about it. However, to really get in the weeds on this one, we are going to have to reference some things from the manga, so if you're an anime only, you're probably going to want to keep scrolling. Alright, so first of all, what we're talking about is hypothetical. So let's kind of just lay it out there so everyone is on the same page. What we are talking about is if all 10 shadows were permanently destroyed, meaning they would first need to be subjugated, because Shikigami isn't permanently destroyed until it has been mastered. So for example, Sukuna destroying Mahoraga in Shibuya didn't permanently get rid of Mahoraga because Megumi hadn't tamed it yet. If Mahoraga were to die after it had been tamed, it would be permanently gone, just like the white divine dog. However, when a Shikigami dies in this way, like the white divine dog, its power is not lost forever. It can be inherited by the other Shikigami in a process called totality. For example, this is the totality divine dog, aka the black divine dog, but with the white divine dog's power infused into it as well. Now, I've already made a whole video, like it's a long one too, going over totality and how it works. So we're not going to go into the weeds in that in this video, but I will link it if you're watching on YouTube down below if you want to see that one. But just to kind of get ahead of any potential confusion here, there is another type of merged Shikigami that is not totality, and that is known as the Unknown Wells Abyss. And essentially that's what we're seeing here, where Megumi combined the frog with Nue, the owl, right? So this is not a totality summoning. It's actually a much weaker form of just combining the Shikigami. And if these die, the subsequent parts, aka the toads and Nue, do not get destroyed permanently. So this is kind of like a workaround, but the trade-off is they're much weaker. So with that out of the way, now let's talk about this hypothetical. What if all 10 Shikigami were trained and then died, so they were gone forever? Meaning, even though there's totality to inherit that power, there's nothing left for that power to go to. So what would happen? Would Megumi's curse technique just be completely worthless? So we're going to approach the answer to this from two different angles. The first one is we're going to assume that the power from the Shikigami, the totality inheritance, is just all completely gone, lost forever. Is the curse technique now useless? No, it's far less powerful, far less versatile, sure, but it isn't completely useless because as we know, just jumping around the screen here, Megumi can still use shadows and manipulate them even without the Shikigami, right? He can store things in them, potentially even other people completely. He can obviously himself get in shadows and move around in them. So it would be interesting to see, honestly, if like that handicap was enforced and just to see like what he would come up with, especially what like a genius of Jujutsu could come up with by just using these things. So not useless, but obviously, yes, far less powerful. Now, the second angle we're going to approach this from is what if the totality power goes to Megumi himself, since there are no Shikigami left to inherit it. And this is where things get far more interesting. However, I am also going to give another spoiler warning here for my anime onlys that stuck around. This is a big one coming. So as we know, Sukuna takes over Megumi's body and he is far more talented and skillful at Jujutsu than Megumi is. So the things he does with the 10 shadows could be a hint at some potential for what could happen in this hypothetical scenario. The first interesting thing that we see Sukuna do is that he summons these like pseudo-divine dogs. They stay as shadows. They don't fully manifest. And what's interesting about this is that there are two, obviously, and we know that one of the divine dogs is dead, right? So either in this pseudo-summoning, it doesn't matter if the Shikigami is dead, or it could just be that like both of these are technically the black divine dog, and maybe you can just summon more of them when you're doing it in this way. The latter is probably a bit more likely, but it's at least interesting that Sukuna showed us kind of this new way to even interact with the 10 shadows, which means there's probably a lot more that's possible as well. However, even more interesting than that is that we see Sukuna use pieces of different Shikigami for himself, and the most iconic of those is Mahoraga's Dharma Chakra Wheel. However, there's some important distinctions we need to talk about here, because Sukuna in this moment is not gaining Mahoraga's power. Sukuna is not the one that is adapting to everything. He is merely undergoing the process of adaptation for Mahoraga. So Sukuna will get hit with an attack and Mahoraga will adapt to it, not Sukuna. So this, considering the hypothetical we're talking about is the Shikigami powers are inherited by Megumi, this doesn't prove that, but it is very interesting nonetheless. I feel like it's a dot on the line that's getting us there. The fact that he can singularly take these certain things and utilize them himself. And the Dharma Chakra wheel isn't the only time we see this. And this instance here is actually the most interesting to me because here we see Sukuna using Max Elephant's water and basically manipulating it to be like a piercing blood attack. So the big question mark here for me is Max Elephant dead or not? Now, we never saw it die. We haven't like seen it used in a totality summoning. So we gotta just assume that it's alive, in my opinion, which would just mean that Sukuna is doing something similar with, how he used Mahoraga's Dharma Chakra wheel. He's using Max Elephant's water, even though he didn't fully summon Max Elephant. However, it is a bit different than the wheel because, like I just explained, Mahoraga was still the one adapting, but Sukuna is like just straight up using a weapon of a Shikigami that he hasn't summoned. So, again, I do think Max Elephant is probably alive here, but if we just assume Max Elephant is dead, then here is Sukuna using an inherited power from a Shikigami, right? Again, not fair to make that assumption, but I think this at least poses it in the realm of possibility that the Ten Shadows user themselves could potentially, ultimately, inherit and use the powers of Shikigami that are gone. Like, just imagine Megumi with a Dharma Chakra wheel that adapted for him, and he could, like, summon Mahoraga's Sword of Extermination. He could fly due to Nue. Like, the possibilities are honestly endless and really cool to think about. Now, do I think the story will go that direction, especially considering everything that's happening in the story right now? Not really, but I do think it's possible and would make the Ten Shadows technique really cool, because this is, like, a glaring weakness in it, the fact that if all the Shikigami die, you're basically just a shadow merchant, right? Now, in the history of the Zenin clan, no one has ever even tamed Mahoraga, so like this would be uncharted territory. No one would know this. So that could explain why that like Zenin clan members aren't trying to go kill their Shikigami, because no one would have ever been in this situation before to learn that they themselves could wield the power ultimately. So at the end of the day, I'm leaning option 2 just because rule of cool, right? But honestly, I don't really think we'll even get the answer to this because I don't feel like there's room in the story for that to develop. One, if Sukuna did it, like he's already too powerful enough, right? Like I don't see that happening. And two, if Megumi gets his body back, one, he already has some Shikigami still, so they're not all dead yet. So I don't really know if I would see those then dying and then him getting this power up. Plus the whole like Megumi, he's in a rough spot right now. So I see Megumi's story kind of going a different direction than like insane power up saves the day. But we'll have to see. Let me know y'all's thoughts on this in the comments for sure, because this is a really interesting one. And on that note, I want to give a big shout out to Jack over on YouTube who sponsored this question. And in addition to the Ten Shadows stuff, Jack also wanted to know if I thought Mahito could change somebody's curse technique or give one to someone that didn't have one. Now, this is really interesting because we have precedent for this, and specifically it's the Culling Game moments where Kenjaku uses the mass idol transfiguration to activate all of those players, right? And so one group of those players he activates are the incarnated sorcerers, like sorcerers he made deals with, a long time ago that then take over those bodies essentially, right? So we don't need to talk about them. The other group is what we need to talk about. Kenjaku made people into sorcerers. He basically gave them curse techniques, and that was through Mahito's idol transfiguration. However, there's an important distinction here. Apparently, those people already possessed the ability to become sorcerers, and Kenjaku just gave them the right brains to then actually use the curse technique. So take that for what you will, but for me, that implies that Mahito's technique couldn't just go straight up give a random person on the street a curse technique. That person would already have to have the potential to have a curse technique. Now, what that means, I don't know. Is it like certain things in their DNA that just weren't activated or something? Maybe. So, and my phone died. So could Mahito give somebody a curse technique under the right circumstances? I don't think he could change someone's curse technique, but I do think he could remove someone's curse technique. It only stands to reason that if he could grant someone access, he could take it away, right? Plus, we've got the situation with Toto, which is still somewhat of a mystery, but I think if Mahito was more skilled and knew he could do this, he could straight up remove people's curse techniques.